Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are here giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And without any further ado, we'll get to the preliminaries later. We're going to introduce to you a returning guest. She's going to be with us on a regular basis here on the program to talk about a wide variety of subjects concerning changing the world, making this a better place for everyone. And we may even talk a little bit, because of some of the things I've read that she's sent me, talk about her whole timeline thing, and if she has any patience. Because Suzanne Taylor, I want to thank you for joining us. You seem like I was with Jacques Fresco of the Venus Project and his vision for the future. I asked him if it was going to happen in my lifetime, and he said probably not. And I said, rats, because what he was proposing sure sounded neat. Thanks for being with us, Suzanne.
Well, you see, I'm no spring chicken, and I want it in my lifetime.
I
So,
hear you.
everybody says, "Oh, train the kids." Yeah, that'd be good. That's not enough. And you said lots of subjects. One subject: how to turn the world around, to create us as a cooperative humanity and not as a violent, oppositional, warlike species, which we have to grow out of. It's been a process, and we're our bodies are pretty fully in this evolutionary deal, but our understanding, our interior reality, is still has a ways to go, and the ways to go is to get us to be a beautiful community of humanity, making this a lovely world. I mean, crazy that we're not doing
Yeah.
that, but understandable in terms of evolution.
Right.
We're
But
just not all there yet.
yeah, but we're not talking about the word that often comes up. They say is impossible, is a
No,
utopia. A utopia. That's not what we're talking about here. Because we're human beings, right, Suzanne? We're going to have differences of opinion. We're going to have, we hope, minor little conflicts from time to time, challenges, because we all have different personalities, we all have different philosophies, and so on and so forth. But there are ways, and that's why you have brought together a wonderful group of people today to talk about the ways in which we might be able to accomplish that, right?
well, yes, of course we'll have conflicts. In other words, we won't agree on everything, but we won't have wars to decide who's right. So it's just a whole different operating system that we are evolving to. And if we had forever, we it could take forever. But we've got dangers lurking, and if we don't cooperate, we can't deal with those. So,
Right.
uh, so I brought on here
Mhm.
a couple of my really good old buddies, because I've moved from, as we started, I think this is the fourth time I've been on with you, Richard.
Mhm.
And before, I've kind of been putting together a dossier. We could do this, we could do that. We meaning get people like ourselves organized, maybe this, maybe that. But now I've moved into, okay, let's do this. And this is what I want to talk about today. There were two aspects to it. One aspect was creating a huge coalition of people like ourselves. And the other aspect is some way to direct it. What will this, let's say we have millions of people, bigger than the Democrats and Republicans, and I see that possible. My plan for it is that Marianne Williamson should call the beloved community into reality. But right here, I want to deal with the other aspect I see, which is, as I say, it needs some kind of governing body to tell it what to do, or to guide this force that can create whatever. So that would be pulling really smart people together, and this is a little mini version of that.
Mm.
So I think maybe to start, though, rather than get right into what will we do, let's get into who are we briefly. So, Cornelia, um, maybe you would start. If you just say a word about what your life's about, and what got you into this perspective. Uh, we've known each other for decades. You were already in this perspective, and I actually don't know quite what got you there. So, in order for people to work together, they have to know who they are. You can't just throw out an idea and say, okay, you say something, you say something. First we have to be juicy with one another. So why don't you say a little bit about what you're up to and how you got here. And then we go over to Paul.
Yeah, so for me, gosh, I've been on what I would call the conscious path since I was a teenager. And the catalyst for that was my father's death. And my dad and I were very, very close. And he was quite young and had a brain aneurysm and died. And for me, when he passed, I can remember he didn't die instantly, which most brain aneurysm sufferers do, but he ended up having surgery and went into a coma and never woke up from the coma. And I can remember laying in ICU next to him in his bed, and there was just this internal knowing. And the knowing was, that I said to my father, I really, really, really want you to stay. And I know this is between you and God. And if you really want to go and you need to go, then you should go. And he passed. And for me, that just sent me into a real dark time. And, my everything, my anchor, my solid relationship in life was gone. And I really didn't know what I was doing on the planet. Why are we here? What is the purpose of it all? And that began my journey. And so for me, many, many decades later now, my life is in service to that, in service to waking up, being conscious, making a difference, and really contributing to the awakening of other human beings in whatever form that takes.
Beautiful. Lovely, honey. Okay, Paul, your turn.
Yeah, thanks. It's very nice to see you. And it's very nice to meet Cornelia and say hello to Richard. You beat me with 4 shows. I think I did 3 with Richard. Cornelia, that's a very touching and moving story about you and your father. I can relate somewhat much more recently with my own brother, who passed away, as I say, fairly recently. Mike, well, I'm happy to hold up a copy of my book, which was published in the UK last month, called Maya Maya, A Spiritual Journey into Cosmic Truth and the Dawning of a New World, which sums up my own journey, which began, I wasn't quite a teenager, I was a bit older than that, in my 20s, looking for meaning and where it led me. So it's been a journey of over 40 years. I've known Suzanne for probably now 20 years, I would think. I now live in Michigan. I've been living in Michigan since the end of April this year. I've lived in Los Angeles for 34 years. You can probably tell from my accent I'm English. And so, I've remained, Suzanne's been a wonderful friend, and she's also a great inspiration. She never tires. In fact, if anything, she only gains in strength and momentum. And I won't say she's roped me into this latest cause, but it's obviously a cause that I support. Anybody who is conscious and anybody who does care would support. To me, in thinking about it, particularly in the last 24 hours, in terms of how this thing is shaped, who's involved, it's enormously complicated and vast. But one way I would like to perhaps see it is with the wonderful word, a murmuring. If you could, a murmuring of birds. I don't know if you know these swarms of starlings and it's thousands of birds that are all moving together as one, but not always in the same way, in the same direction, but they hold together. And the other side of the other meaning of the word murmuring. It's a collective murmuring, not of angst, but it's a murmuring, if you like, of love and community that we want to create. But I think that and another wonderful thing, well, the reason I sort of see it more as a murmuring is because there is no leader. I think a leader or leadership is doomed to failure. I think it has to be a collective wholeness that everybody buys into, like those birds or a swarm of fish, a shoal of fish. That all somehow there's a synchronistic movement that they are all consciously aware of, and but just something that grows. How it begins, I'll leave that to Suzanne, but because I think that there are, not only think, I mean, it's extremely evident that there are millions of people in all countries who would tie in and buy into this murmuring, this collective murmuring. It just has not yet. Right now, it's starlings or birds in their own small little pockets, and it hasn't developed into a global conscious movement. But I think I agree totally with Suzanne. It is something to be tapped into. But I think that one very important tenet, I think there probably need to be certain principles, but those principles I would assume are almost givens. They're given. That the word is cooperation. We need to cooperate together. Cooperation will save us. And it's, I guess, one of the last thing very briefly, by way of introductory statement. I live in a swing state. I know it's a swing state because I cycle around every morning and I see as many Trump signs as I see for Harris and Walls. That's Michigan. But I've also seen another statement which is called Wu-Tang. I don't know if you've come across Wu-Tang. I had to look it up myself. Wu-Tang is that holding together. And I might have got this a little bit wrong, but I think in principle, the Wu-Tang is holding together is more important than dividing us apart. And some people have in their front yards, Wu-Tang is forever. So
I have a question for the three of you, and it's primarily because you brought this up, Paul. And no, it is not a political question by any means, but it is a fundamental question, I think. And I'm curious, as we, through four, are very, very much interested in raising the consciousness of our families, our cities, states, nations, the world, to a place where we can have that kind of living, where we're not surviving anymore, we're thriving. There is, of course, in this country, a document that starts out with "We the People" and ends with basically we establish this for, and in this case, rather than the United States of America, it's for all people. We establish this. Do you think that that formula, and this is just specifically the preamble, not the clauses and the wherefores and the Bill of Rights and so forth, just the preamble, where we the people, in order to form a more perfect union and so on and so forth, do you think that that is still something that we collectively, I'm going to put it this way, globally could embrace? Maybe it could be worded a little differently, but the gist is there, that we could all embrace as we are raising our consciousness, saying, yes, individuality is important and community is equally as important. And that as we raise our consciousness, we, I hope, begin to realize that we must be aware of what we as individuals are doing, as well as how that will impact the community. Paul, what are your thoughts on that? You think it's
Sorry, I got diverted by somebody, but I'm hoping they're going to come on this call.
okay?
My thoughts on that is I like it. I mean, obviously the American Constitution is an outstanding document. And I think the concept of we the people is what this is all about. It's all about we the people are here to create a world for everyone. And a world for the world, a world for the earth. I mean, a world for not just for the people, but for all the creatures. So in that concept, but I think it has to be bigger than sustainability. The concept has to be bigger than sustainability. You used the word thrive. Yeah, I mean, it has to be as I see it. Where we're all, I don't know, but it certainly is a bigger than a political statement. It's bigger than an environmental statement, as in sustainability. It's a state. It's creating, if we can. You mentioned utopia, and it's impossible to attain. But the Garden of Eden, and that's the goal. That's the intention.
Well, not quite. Not quite.
Okay,
That's the Garden of Eden.
Correct me. I mean, I stand to be corrected. It's your wisdom.
Well, the Garden of Eden is, picking the fruit off the trees and spearing the fish. And that we wouldn't have our world if everything was so beautiful.
Right.
It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have different ideas. That's the way we progress. We go here with someone, oh no, that doesn't work. We have to change that. And then we go here. So, the whole idea is that we're a cooperative humanity taking these turns. No, we don't like that. That won't work for us. Now we'll go this way. Not right. We don't like that. We're going to bomb you.
Right. I agree. I mean, obviously, disagreement and discussion are wonderful things. So it's cooperation and disagreement, if necessary, with the principle of kindness, which I know is a very big concept of yours.
Yeah.
Beautiful, perfect word. Yeah. I like what you said too. Community will save us. Yeah. Yes, community where we do feel this loving, caring about each other. We're not here to climb over each other and make the most money as the only goal. But we're here to be a humanitarian world, not an economic world. And that's the fundamental shift that we need to make.
Yeah. Cornelia, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, as I'm listening to you, really what's coming forward for me is the moment you establish the formality of what I heard in your speaking, Richard, was creating the we the people and the preamble and the whole intro to it. The moment you create an entity, or in this case movement, that I think we're speaking about, it becomes automatically there's us and there's other. There's us and there's them. The people who are in the movement, people who are not in the movement, the people who are part of the community, people who are not part of the community, which then perpetuates the paradox that we're already living in. Because then it just becomes another us and them. So I'm in this as I said to Suzanne, this is an experiment, this is an inquiry. But when you're speaking that's automatically where I go. The moment you define something that we are, then all of a sudden there is the opening for who's not or what's not. And that continues separation, which is what has created the world that we're in today.
So I guess what we need to do is we need to come to the understanding that whatever we do create is not for a select few. It is for everybody, all 8.5 billion human beings that exist on this planet. One of the interesting, I call it dichotomies, that I find so interesting, and I have for the last 40, 50 years, is this whole aspect, the terminology that's used of exporting democracy. And I look at us and I look at where we want to export it, and I'm going, please don't do that, because we have enough issues we're dealing with, and we don't need to put that on them. Let them figure it out for themselves, whatever the country it is, whatever the community it is. I think of the indigenous peoples who live in the rainforest, for example, or in the jungles of Central and South America, who don't have Zoom and technology, and they're doing just fine. They're living their lives. They're doing the things that they do, and they don't have the kind of conflicts that we seem to have. And this whole aspect, and of course, what comes to mind is the old Star Trek thing of the Prime Directive, non-interference. And yet at the same time, if someone asks for help, then we're there to help, especially in times of, let's say, disasters like the hurricanes that we've had on the East Coast and the fires that we've had over here on the West Coast. So I guess it really does come down to, we have to come to a consensus of understanding that this is for everybody, but it has to be also respecting the respective community. I guess they put it this way, the community and the way it lives and thrives, and is doing just fine, and saying, look, we'd love for you to join us, but we're not asking you to give up your way of life per se. Do you think that's even possible to do? Because again, we have enough trouble getting two people to agree on something, and then they end up divorcing, or they end up estranged siblings, or they take up arms one against the other, that kind of thing. So what are your thoughts? Is that even possible? And yet we got 8.5 billion people, and how are we even going to accomplish that?
Well, let's go back to my premise
Go
of
for it.
this switch from all the things that we might do to
Okay.
Let's do this. And the let's do this, which I'd like us to talk about, is this idea of the beloved community. I never thought about, Cornelia, the fact that if you create something, there's an opposition, because the principles of this wouldn't be about that. It wouldn't be about being against others. It would be an invitation for everyone to be part of something that's just based on caring. I don't know that you'd bring up that kind of, because that oppositional world is one we're coming from, and what we're looking to do is create one that's not like that. And so how would we do that? Oh my God, what a question. But then what it occurred to me, on Martin Luther King Day, Marianne Williamson did this talk about him, and heaven knows we appreciate that heritage legacy that he left us, and that one of his main points was the need for, or the recognition of, or the expansion of the beloved community. But he wasn't talking about getting signatures. He was talking about the world as the beloved community, calling for it right on. And I'm saying, well, how's about we actually create it? And it wouldn't be that Marianne Williamson would be the boss of it. And again, this is what would be the boss of it: some kind of smart people coming together to figure out what this massive force that had been created could turn itself to. And I just picture Marianne as the one who calls it into being. She's got the kind of legacy and heritage and history of poor Marianne. They didn't understand her in this presidential campaign. She was so far beyond the repressive kind of world we live in, into being so tuned into the possibility of where we could be. but she planted a lot of good seeds, and she got me activated to think, well, how about we really do this? So what do you think about the way I would see it is Marianne would get serious and say, okay, if we create a massive force, for sure, that could be advised by a committee like this as to what it should advocate. I call for signing up for the beloved community. Now, and it doesn't have rules, it doesn't have structure. It's just people like ourselves saying, yes, we want this world to be the way we know it can be, for people who do know that, and then we'll tune in the rest of the world. So I throw out to you, to all of you, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, that's kind of the main focus of, why I wanted us to come together here.
So what I ultimately hear is what you're speaking to, Suzanne, then is really a movement of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
A movement with a greater purpose and intention and opportunity for people to step into it and really live the essence of what we say we're about. That's
well,
what you're
no,
saying.
I'm thinking these are people who already are tuned into that, coming together to exert some influence in the world, because right now it's all gadflies. All the smart people are individuals poking away at smarter ways to do, their ideas. But nobody's, created a union, a force. I like that murmuring bird thing. It's almost, I think I love those murmurings where those huge birds,
so beautiful,
turn with no leadership, whatever.
Right.
And in a way, it's kind of like it would be if we were in that evolved place. We would operate by cooperating, cooperating for life, for existence. So it's a beautiful image, actually. I like that a lot. What do you think about it? Marianne said she won't, I know Marianne from a long time, so we chat. And she said, no, she would have to be drafted. It would have to be some kind of consensus or something. She's not going to impose herself, say, okay, now we create the beloved community. So I said, well, let me try and create some movement where you're drafted.
I think it's very important that it is devoid of figurehead, period.
But it has to come into existence, and she's kind of the likely one to call for it, not to lead it.
Right.
Just to bring it into existence.
Right.
Well,
so she would need to reach out to people who she is connected with in the way that you're connected with Marianne, so you're able to reach out to Marianne, and presumably Marianne is connected with other, for want of another word, known individuals, people, and float this concept that it is where to me this is a far worse analogy, but a way of trying to understand the concept. Is it's as if nuclear bombs have gone off around the world, and we are now a human species in complete survival mode. Forget your Kardashians, or forget the internet, or forget everything. We are now all reduced to be what we've got one thing in common. We are human beings. Nobody's wearing any hat. We are a species in survival, and it induces in us, or some of us, hopefully, this sense of mutual support, mutual cooperation, coming together. And so it's that sort of because as you put it, Suzanne, we are in survival mode, or we're very close to being in survival mode. I listened on the radio coming home from the Aetherius Society in the car just now, and I think it was the head of the United Nations who was saying humanity is walking a tightrope. We're walking a tightrope. Fortunately, the tightrope hasn't yet snapped, but so it needs to be a community of humanity that literally we the people. Because I think the very concept of Marianne Williamson, God bless Marianne Williamson, but would be as off-putting to probably more people than it would be conducive for them to want to sign up. As soon as you, so she would need to operate in the background. All of these people would need to operate in the background. I say this because, to my mind, for it to be able to catch on and have success,
there is a process, a formula, so to speak, or forum that's been created since I think the mid 1800s. I myself was a member of this organization, this group of people, for about a year and a half back in the mid 90s, and they had this beautiful concept of these at different levels of society, these councils of 9. And when you became a member of this council, you did not run for the office, if you will, office 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You lived your life, and the people observed you throughout the year as you participated in community activities and so forth. And they would say, you know what, I want Suzanne. I want her to be in position 1. And then they'd vote. And this was a non-campaigning kind of situation. And 9 people would be selected. Now, part of the agreement is if you accept the post, and you don't have to, but it is, number one, that when you sit down at the table with these other 8, and somebody comes in and says, I have a problem, and they present the problem, and the 9 tell this person, okay, we will take it under advisement, and we will call you when we have an idea for you, a solution. Now, it's not going to be in concrete because we don't know 100% if it's going to work, but we're going to give it our best shot. So the person goes, they talk about it. So as they're discussing it and they place their individual ideas on the table, Suzanne places hers. The moment she places her idea on the table, it's not hers anymore. It is now the collective 9's idea. Now, each one may come up with a different solution for this person. Then this person would come back and say, okay, I hear you have a solution for me, or you have at least an idea of what I might do about this issue I'm dealing with. Well, the vote could be split 5-4 and so forth, could be unanimous. But if it is split, those who are in the minority, once the vote has been taken and the decision has been made, those in the minority acquiesce and say, this is our decision as the council. The ego is taken out of it. The person comes in, they give them the idea, they go off. And remember, if this doesn't work for you, come back and we'll revisit it.
But Richard,
This concept comes from the Baha'i faith. And they also have a council all the way up to the International House of Justice that is in Haifa, Israel. And this is the way that they deal with the issues within their community specifically. There is no ego involved. There's no personality in that regard. You choose to be a part of this community. And I know this may sound a little harsh, but we have a lifeboat that'll hold 8,500,000,000 people. But we cannot take the old ideas with us because Einstein was very clear. You can't solve the problem with the same consciousness that created it. And that is not saying you can't come.
Said that.
I'm sorry?
According to Suzanne, he never actually said that. Isn't that right?
Okay, well,
that's a whole other thing. Isn't it funny that it's so popular? It's one of the popular quotes ever. And he never said that. But I don't care.
Just,
Beautiful quote.
I don't think there can be, I wouldn't even have a council, and I certainly wouldn't have any voting. I think what the only thing I would have probably are three or ideally three, more guiding principles.
Mm-hmm.
But let me roll this back.
Yeah, roll
Okay.
it back.
All right.
Let me roll this back. What you're talking about, Richard, and what you're now commenting on, Paul, is a very good thing to be deliberating about, but it's next. It's not now.
Okay.
First, there's some union of all of, look, we're in trouble. That takes a long time to establish systems that go into all the little places where we have ways to put ourselves together. And that will be the topic to deal with once we have a kind of force that is primary. As I say, we're all gadflies now. There's no union, there's no organization, there's no power behind the ideas that we have, which are the life-giving ideas. And so I want to go back to the thing I find the most promising is that idea of the beloved community, because of Martin Luther King, because Marianne's very articulate and she's been on that herself, that she could be the now, if she instigated that, maybe it wouldn't be okay, tomorrow she's going to instigate that. No. Okay, Marianne, let's see. How about instigating that? We could pull together a long list of people who would be supportive of that. So it comes out with Marianne being the caller. Somebody needs to say something, you know, and all these other celebrities, people we respect, are there because they've already agreed that's a good idea, you know, so Marianne doesn't own it or boss it, but she's just a flagpole, you know, that we rally around. So can we talk about that as a way, because I say I'm moving from all the ideas about how things should be to let's do something very specific that we can do quickly.
One would not rally around, and it's nothing personal against Marianne Williamson for a moment. But
how would you do it, Paul? Because that's my topic. How do we create a force out of all of us people we're ready, but we're all isolated. How do we put ourselves together?
It's an understanding. It's an understanding.
Yes.
That we are here for the collective or the beloved community, if that's what you want it to be called. But
it works only because we have heritage with Martin Luther King. You know, you build on things.
You don't need that heritage because it's bigger than any Martin Luther King. God bless him.
All right. Well, tell me how you make it happen. It doesn't have to be called that. I just thought that was a good idea.
It's humanity. It's one global humanity in which no one is on a pedestal any step higher or below anybody else.
Okay, tell me how we get it.
You get it. Okay.
No, how do we get it? It's a question.
Okay, so we get it by and the guiding principles. I don't know what this noise is. I do know it's Skype, and I don't know where it's coming from, but I can't. So I get this thing coming. It needs. I mean, because in order to understand, we need to understand it before we can create it, I would think. So there are guiding principles, one of which is that we are here above all to survive, to embrace life. We're here to embrace life. We're here to survive together. And the principles are love is probably too big a word, but certainly kindness, tolerance, understanding,
altruism,
the principles of altruism, exactly. And so it's that kind of, do we want to buy into it and create, which would create a force? You know, one bird starts flying, another bird joins it, 4 or 5, 6 more join it, then 20 join it, and becomes a movement that's doing a dance in the sky for joy, for celebration, for life. So in terms of how you get that, maybe, well, Suzanne's the initial Starling, and with 3 or 4 that have come to join her. Marianne may be one who can bring 20 more Starlings, but those it's building that collective movement, because we not only buy into those principles, but we recognize the importance, the essential need for humanity to come together. And out of that, another thing, if anything comes to mind from the previous 24 hours, is the pussy hats. Remember when Trump said gratify pussy? And you suddenly had these tremendous marches of women coming out of nowhere with their pussy hats. And there's something similar was the Occupy Wall Street movement. It's because the grassroots, the sentiments are already there. So for people who want to, you hear about it literally through the grapevine. And to create this movement that's such that it's become a block that puts pressure on governments. I'm thinking particularly of sort of the Israeli government, if I can say that, the Iranian government, Hamas movement, you name it. That just sort of engages them or makes them see themselves as being so, I don't want to say wrong, but trivial compared to the survival movement that we've become.
Paul, all of that is what I'm talking about, but how to bring it in, it's totally everything you said, but how does it come into being? Suzanne Taylor is not going to, hello world, come into, well, you say nobody heads it. So I need as I said, to me, I saw the Marianne connection as a way.
Well, I think one of the things that needs to be sort of accepted, and this is where this phrase that came out 9 years ago was, to me, rather appalling, because and I hear this constantly of other parts of the world spoken by certain people, that they're hellholes, they're awful places to be, and on and on. And most every city in the country probably is labeled, and other countries in the world, especially in Africa, and they've referred to them as third world. And I sit here going, wait a minute, this is not such a bad place. Okay, let's set aside all of the challenges that we're dealing with. I live in Santa Barbara, California. Setting aside all of the issues, this is right now a beautiful place to live. Even if there is a wildfire that was burning, which thank God right now there is not. But what I'm saying is that we need to accept that where we are is a beautiful place, that the people around us are beautiful people, that they do care. As a kid growing up during the Cold War, I kept hearing how horrible the Russians were. And then in the 80s, when interviewers would go over there and start interviewing the people, they found out they cared as much about their children and family as we or anybody else in the world does. And so they're no different than us. So they are us and we are them. And right now we're being told that because of other people, we have these problems, that this isn't a beautiful place. This isn't a beautiful, serene paradise. And I'm not just speaking of Santa Barbara. Even though I'm not a fan of the heat in Phoenix, Arizona, it is its own kind of paradise because people love living there. It's something to do. They love living there. And every other place. And every place does have its challenges, like Florida just went through. But we have this mindset that we have to just constantly denigrate somebody else. Obviously, that's
Richard, that's not what we're here to. We're here to figure out how to
but
put
the point,
people together.
Well, I understand that, but my point is that we need to start accepting that it already is now present tense, and that we are now present tense, divine, beautiful people, and we all do care. And I realize that that's a hard one for us to spread, but it's got to start with each one of us.
Yeah, but
And
that's too abstract and puny, you know,
well,
again.
you got to start somewhere.
Well, I'm telling you, start with draft Marianne to call.
Okay.
You've been quiet for a while. What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, I actually have to go because
I know you've got
I've got a
another
work
one, yeah.
I've got a work call that I need to prep for. Well, what I was just hearing when Richard was sharing, how I hear that is, if we're coming from a paradigm of something's really wrong and it needs to be fixed, then we're just designing a new Band-Aid. If we're coming from a place of acceptance or tolerance, acceptance probably,
Mhm.
and then we can choose to get some altitude, look at it from the aerial view.
Mhm.
This is how it is. This is what's occurring, and creating from there. What we create is not trying to fix something. It's an opportunity or the invitation for people to step into and step up to that place of the murmuring. That's what I was hearing in what Richard was sharing. I think it's an amazing, interesting conversation. I'm sorry, I need to go.
Well, the invitation is open to you to return.
2:30, so we should chain you for 10 more minutes.
Well, I've got a call that starts at 2:30, and I've got
time you're on. So.
Yeah, I've got to prepare for it. So
well, we thank you for being a part of this, and we look forward to having you back again.
Yeah,
well, wait a minute, Cornelia. Just give me a high five about this. How to bring it into being, and what's your thought about Marianne, which is just my, presenting idea here.
Well, I agree with you that somebody needs to hold the flag and bring it into existence. Whether that's Marianne or not, I don't know. There's, she has so many people that love her and support her and really stand with her in all that she is up to.
Yeah, she brings a big community with her already. She does. She does. Huge
I would just not want her to be, for it to be diminished because people have their opinions and points of view about her, that it then becomes, oh, that's Marianne Williamson's new movement or new gig. Yeah. And I think that defeats what we're talking about in the first place.
It would not be identified as the Marianne Project. It would just be, she starts the ball rolling. And as we're all talking and you're objecting to her individual, I'm thinking, well, maybe first of all, get her on board. And then maybe there's an initial group of people who are, George Clooney and Oprah and
while Cornelia is still on the call. I agree with you, but I think that if Marianne does it, Marianne needs to do it anonymously. In terms of reach, because one of the things about these starlings is they all look alike. Marianne is a bird. We're all birds. We're all equal birds. Our feathers are exactly the same. Birds and feathers flock together. But people who associate with this movement, this growing movement, will flock to it and move with it, and it'll grow organically.
Flock to it. Isn't that a good word? Flock.
But as soon as whoever it is, there is no single human being, including Martin Luther King Jr. Immediately you put a name to it, you're going to disaffect others. It has to be humanity. It's humanity where we are literally all one. And this game of celebrity that we play doesn't exist in this new world.
Yes, but it works for reaching. Anyway, I'm nervous about Cornelia now.
I've got to go, you
Oh,
guys.
I don't wanna-
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah,
I
bye
want to chain you.
bye.
Well, we're talking here on this program. It's called Tell Me Your Story, about what I have made reference to many, many times over the years, 17 to be exact, about wanting to change the world, looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around you. They don't work. And so we need to find those new ways, and we need to find those new ways of living together. An individual, yes, plays a great role in that process, as of course is iterated in the preamble of the Constitution. We the people, we are the ones as a collectively as well as individuals who are the ones that have the power, if you will. But this isn't about power. This is about change. And I know, Suzanne, that you are looking for some definitive answer to your question. How do we do this? And I think that it's not something. I don't believe that it is something that will have a defined beginning moment. At least collectively as a community, it has to start on an individual level. I've said this many times that when I post these programs, these podcasts and videocasts, though I might mention every once in a while, hey, X number of people have been listening over the last 18 years. Wow, that's pretty good. I don't care about the numbers. People have said, you need to monetize your thing. But I don't want a barrier between the listener and the ideas, the information, and that each person is open to taking from what we call the smorgasbord of ideas, what resonates with them. And then hopefully they'll come back after partaking of that, after having been affected or impressed or inspired by it, will then consider something else. They'll say, hey, I didn't like that over there before, but that sounds pretty neat. I may try that. And it's like they do that, and then another person does it, and another person, and it begins to grow, but there's no name that is behind it. It's not me. It's all of my guests. There's no one person who is responsible for me and where I'm at. Thousands of people, if you will, are responsible. I give them all credit. Even though
my premise, Richard, is that
Yeah.
something has to spark it.
Yes.
I agree with everything.
And that's what I'm talking about.
said.
That's what has to spark it. It's an individual spark that begins to grow, just like you just talked about the birds. And see, maybe one or two birds will get up there and then others will follow. But once it gets moving, there's no real leader. And a matter of fact, I don't know that they've actually been able to figure out how it is that they can fly like that in the kind of unison that they do. It's amazing. It's
That's
spectacular.
what we've got to become.
I'm sorry?
Closing remarks, Suzanne, can I have some brief closing remarks?
Mhm.
Well, I want to say something too about an idea I have.
Go ahead.
So last, and that is when you say change, Richard, you use the word change. I've heard the word change, almost probably as many times as you've heard it, and we've all heard the word change. We need change. We need change. Coming back to Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. got his principles of nonviolence actually from Jim Lawson, who got them from Mahatma Gandhi. And one of the sort of famous quotes from Mahatma Gandhi is, "Become the change you wish to see in the world." So what I would say, rather than it being about change, it's a movement about being. It's about being. It's about authentic being. That's the call, because the change is kicking the can down the road, and that's what change is. It's about authentic being. It's being. We need to be humans in this moment collectively, because of not just because we're looking at the crises, we're not looking at what we are in that joyous, delightful sense of being, and to come into that moment and that movement will itself draw in other birds that want to join this flight, this community, this global community of movement that's only full of joy and cooperation. How it's fine but it needs Marianne Square in terms of getting it going. But she needs to be, but it's anonymous. There is no name attached to it. It's a collective uprising from our hearts. It's invisible. Those are my closing remarks.
Suzanne?
Okay, well, all well and good. Everything you're saying is good, except that here we are with so many people who already are of this ilk, and we're all separated. How to make it's very nice to say, oh, we're just it's individual, everybody wake up, and then what? Like we have separated. So what I'm looking what I'm looking to do is, how to create that catalyst that gets us together. But this is an idea that I have now from what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in the when this is posted, put up the talk that Marianne Williamson did about the beloved community, and she wasn't saying let's do it. She was just pointing to Martin Luther King's beautiful concept, and put up that little talk of hers, not that long, and put up my Substack address so that people can contact me and say, in terms of getting this to happen, in terms of catalyzing it, in terms of dealing because we're in danger and not just waiting for what might emerge, but what can we actually do? What are your opinions about this? Or are there other opinions? And look for, it is all part of that process. Look for the way that this could come into being. My suggestion is, Marianne, call it. Here's her material. You can see what that would sound like. And now, be in touch with me, and I'll be, the focal point to evaluate, but to collect and, see what we can do with ideas that come in. This is a process, but not a process to take forever. We don't have forever.
Well, I want to thank, of course, Cornelia, as well as you, Paul, and Suzanne, for joining us here on this little, we'll sort of call it a sort of an impromptu little conversation, group conversation. And we hope to be able to do this again down the road as well, because these kinds of conversations are what elicit a lot of ideas. And for some folks who have never even thought of it before, maybe it will elicit a spark in them of inspiration that says, yeah, that's not a bad idea. They're not asking me to give up anything. They're not asking me to change religions or political affiliations or races or move to another part of the world. They're asking me to be, just like what you said, Paul, and I could not agree with you more. They're asking me to be right where I am. And the thing about that is, folks, if you want to talk about the economy, it doesn't cost a dime. It really doesn't. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Lovely to see you again, Richard.
You bet, Paul Nugent, and Suzanne Taylor. Thank you for being a part of this program and the catalyst behind this and future programs such as this. It's really great to have you with us.
Well, thanks for giving us this opportunity to toss this around. I think it's, one of the most important things we could be doing.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love Talal, Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.